to introduce who we are all here to listen to and ask questions and get those answers, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Happy Halloween, everybody.
Jump right in. I know it's like we're gonna pay this off storytelling style and start at the end, go back to the beginning, and come full circle. But after 44 years, this is the last Halloween. How does it feel?
You know, endings are a bitch. But so is Laurie Strode. So, I'm ready to end it.
No.
But I'm gonna miss you so much.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Jamie.
I take it so seriously, you guys, and I don't take any of this for granted. And you just have to understand this is overwhelming, and I appreciate your support very, very much, but it's all overwhelming for me.
And you've earned that support. Halloween in 1978 was your first film. There had been some television in your CV previous, but your first film, and Laurie Strode was your first film role. You were 19 at the time. What do you remember most about making that movie, and how you felt about Laurie and yourself intersecting at the same time?
So when I was 19, I was not like Laurie Strode. Laurie Strode was an acting part. You know, you would have hired me to play Linda. Like, I was a little promiscuous, and, you know, I mean, I just wasn't, I was a little snarky and I was a little promiscuous, but I was not Laurie Strode. And it was, what was amazing to me, it was an acting part. She didn't look like me, she didn't dress like me, she didn't think like me. I barely got out of high school. She was like the valedictorian of her class. You know, there was a real opportunity for me to be an actor, which I hadn't had that opportunity before, and for me, that was incredible. So, I loved that opportunity. Shooting the movie, it was shot in 17 days. I've been on a world tour that's twice as long as the amount of time we made the entire movie Halloween. I mean, it's insane. And I guarantee you they've spent more than 25 times, maybe 30 times the amount of money that the movie cost to promote this movie. So it's sort of surreal. But here's my memory, I swear. Steely Dan, Hey 19, was a hit then, and the crew kind of dedicated it to me, which I just thought was unbelievable, because the crew were 25 dudes under 30. And, you know, I was 19, and guys were like saying, hey, here's your song, Jam. And, you know, so anyway, that's my memory, is that somehow, you know, Hey 19 by Steely Dan was about me, which it wasn't. But
See, that's the kind of morsels and memories that we're looking for, because now I'm not going to listen to Hey 19 anytime soon and not be thinking of that memory with you. Steven Spielberg told me when he was making Jaws, Waterloo by ABBA was like on repeat on the radio and he was stuck on the water shooting. Like, a song can be a powerful memory and association with an iconic movie. Let me ask you, as someone who has tried to step into shoes of the genre of not just acting and developing a character, but truly running for your life, hyperventilating, screaming, crying. You're not hanging out with people like, yeah, how was last weekend? Oh, they're ready, cool. All right, I'll go jump in to that insane mode of beyond fight or flight. You're fighting for your life. You're about to be killed. There's an adrenaline, a breathing, a crying, a terror. What did you do to like prepare and sustain that level of acting?
No, I'm thinking. All I knew to do was, because you shoot a movie out of sequence, which is how you make movies, is you don't shoot them in order. And in a low budget movie, you really don't shoot them in order. I numbered sort of, I took 0 to 10, 10 being the most intense part of the movie, which is after she finds her friends and the chase is on. And I sort of numbered the script so that I could know sort of a terror meter of where I was just emotionally, because again, the director should be doing that, but John was also busy with a lot of things. I just wanted to make sure I was sort of in the zone. But you know, I gotta tell you something. All of this is easy for me, and I know that sounds like a really terrible thing to say, because people work hard at their jobs, and I work hard at my job, but it's not a hard job for me. You guys have harder jobs than I will ever have, and yet I get all the fucking attention. So I don't understand why, and yet it's not hard for me. So emotion, all that stuff isn't hard.
I want to say that as a filmmaker, producer, director, actress, anyone who wants to go into storytelling in the visual form should remember that list, because it's true. You shoot out a sequence, and you got to know as a director where your character is going to be at its heightened, and as a performer, you can't be at a 10 the whole time. You'll drive people away. And if you're a 1 the whole time, well, that's just flaccid and stupid. So you gotta, that is really interesting craftsmanship, and I'm really glad you shared that with us, because that's a teachable moment for anyone who wants to be in storytelling. So thank you. You and Laurie have both evolved since the first film, but what of yourself did you put into Laurie in the first film?
Well, again, I was trying to make her a character. I wanted her to be believable. I'm vulnerable and innocent, and you know, I may come off like I'm very sophisticated. I wasn't at 19. I didn't know anything shit at 19, but I pretended maybe I did.
Nobody does, and everyone thinks they know everything.
No, exactly. All that John said to me, and you guys will appreciate it because we're in a big hall, all John said was, I wanted her to be vulnerable. Now, when I was 19, first of all, I couldn't spell vulnerable because I barely got out of high school. And 2, I thought that meant weak. For some reason, I'm not a thesaurus, but you know, I kind of thought vulnerable meant weak. And I was sort of like, okay, John. And what happened is we made the movie. And then I went into a theater in Hollywood, like late night theater in Hollywood. It was a packed house. It was around Halloween. And I stood in the back. And, you know, the movie's going on, and Laurie and her friends, and teasing, and Michael, and hey, speed kills, and all of the setup. And then the phone call from Linda, and Laurie looking out the window, checking on the kids, and then walking across the street. Now you guys know the sequence. It's the first use of Steadicam I'd ever seen. The Steadicam was a brand new tool, and Ray Stella, who was the cameraman, sort of was doing the POV of Laurie across the street and then, pulling me across the street. And you're cutting from Laurie to the house, Laurie to the house. It's that long walk. And in a pin-silent theater, a woman in the middle stood up and went, "Don't go in there, there's a killer in the house!" And the theater, it was like the moment they were released to now go, "Fuck no, no!" And the whole theater started the audience participation that we now know is a horror movie experience. And it was in that second that I went, oh, that's what he meant. He wanted her to be vulnerable so that you cared about her and you didn't want her to get hurt. And you guys haven't wanted me to get hurt for 44 years. My dad, I swear to you guys, this is literally the truth. I didn't know him very well. I didn't grow up with him, and I didn't know him very well. He said two things to me that pertain to show business, which make me laugh. One thing you're not going to really understand unless you're a film student. We were in a car, we pulled up to a stoplight, and I was sitting there, and he was driving, and I remember he turned to me and he said, "Never let them shoot you with anything less than a 50.
Lens size?
Yes, that he was trying to explain that anything less than a 50mm lens was going to distort your face, that a 35mm lens or a 28 or whatever is going to not make you look so good. Now, I have a face the size of a door wedge. So the truth of the matter is a wider lens actually works because, I have a little skinny face. But weirdly enough, Tony Curtis, for some reason, felt like he needed to share that with me. The other thing that was crucial, and it's advice I give to everybody alive who signs their name to something. He said, remember that whatever you sign, there are two little words in the legal description that says in perpetuity.
Right. Good legal advice.
Which means forever. That what you're about to give them by presenting yourself in whatever it is they're filming, that it's theirs forever. And that he said, use that as something to be reminded about. Now, I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Virus, but obviously I didn't heed his advice. There are a couple others that I won't mention, but Virus in this crowd could be particularly...
In perpetuity is the prenup.
Ooh, that is a movie that lasts forever.
Well, what would you say, because we're really here with, fans of the franchise, what do you think, if you had to guess, that people connect with Laurie about?
I think Laurie Strode is everybody's sister, everybody's friend, everybody's daughter, granddaughter, niece. She represented pure innocence and kindness. And when she comes into conflict and collision really with Michael Myers, who is the epitome of evil, in John's understanding of vulnerability, that you care about her. And when I say you guys have cared for me, you have carried her. You love her. You have loved her. But what you have to know, and I appreciate that, at this point, Jamie and Laurie have become woven together. There is no separation. And I appreciate what you're saying. I really, really do. I don't have anything in my life without Laurie Strode. Nothing. I wouldn't have a career. I would not have a family. Everything comes from you loving her. I'm telling you, this should be flipped. This should be flipped. It should be me with the lights on you, because I'm telling you, everything good in my life came from that shitty little office on Cahuenga Boulevard in Hollywood that was about the size of where these two chairs are. When John Carpenter and Deborah Hill cast me in the part of Laurie Strode. I didn't know it then, I know it now. You know, one of these days, hopefully not tomorrow, but you know, I'm 64, I mean, do the math, it's not in my favor. Sooner than later,
no way.
It's gonna say 3 words. Halloween actress dies. But,
No.
but of course she's gonna die, everybody dies. My point is, it is the permanent ink of my life, is you guys. It is the permanent saturation into me, no matter what I do. Whatever the I do, forever, Laurie Strode is because of you. And I thank you, truly from the deepest reserve of my being, I thank you.
It is poetically synonymous with you, which is why you just wrote your own obit. Poetically synonymous with Halloween, and that's what we're here celebrating. After Scream, I went and sat on a dock, because it was all night shoots, and I drank beers on a dock, and then like crawled into my friend's like mom's bed, because I thought it was the safest place I could go. Like sometimes there is like the, oh, I need just something super normal after a wild day of play.
No. No. I mean, the hardest part of the day is getting the blood off, and by the way, Dawn for dishes. Who knew? So H2O was conceived really by me. I'm not titled as a producer on it. I mean, we're all close. You guys aren't going to tell anybody on the internet or anything, are you?
But it was your brainchild.
Oh no, it was me calling John and Deborah and saying, hey, you know, in 2 years, the movie's gonna be 20 years old. Nobody has ever made a movie 20 years later using the same actor, writer, director, producer. Let's do it. And that began, and you know, Kevin Williamson wrote the script.
Right, he wrote Scream.
No, right, exactly. So John ultimately didn't write it, Deborah ultimately didn't produce it, I was in it, and it was conceived as what happens when you run from fear. So Laurie, the conceit of the movie is that Laurie Strode has run from Haddonfield.
Oh shit, that's deep.
She has escaped, she's changed her name, she's living in an assumed identity somewhere else, and she feels like she's safe. And of course, what the whole conceit of the movie was, if you're running from fear, you're dead inside. You can't be alive if you're running from fear all the time. And so the conceit of the movie was that there's this moment, of course, where he comes back, and there's this moment where she has to choose. I'm gonna fight him and die, maybe, but I'm kind of dead already, and if I win, I'm gonna be alive. And that was the conceit of the movie, but it was supposed to end him. Like, end him. That was the conceit, that's what we talked about. That's what I signed up for, and it was all going along great, and then I got the script, and it was vague ending. It was like, whatever, a car going off a cliff and a fire, or whatever. And it just kept happening. I kept going back to them, going like, hey, I thought we were like ending this. This is vague. Anyway, it turned out that in that moment, there was some contract. I don't know who it was, the Weinsteins were involved. I
hope it didn't have in perpetuity in it.
And you couldn't kill him. Now, this is a train that's going. I mean, we're ready to go. And Kevin came up. I said, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to tease an audience again. I said I came up with this idea to end it. I'm not going to like tease you guys and be like, oh yeah, it wasn't, you know, I didn't really, but get you to come to the movie. What happened was, I said I won't do the movie. I won't do it. Laurie Strode has to kill Michael. Done. Or I'm not going to do the movie. I don't need to, blah, blah, blah.
Well, good for sticking for your gut.
What happened
Principles.
is that Kevin Williamson came up with an idea. There was one of those moments of this. What if, between the scene in the house and the body being brought out, anyway, you know the answer to this, it turns out not to be Michael in the thing, it turns out to be a paramedic who's actually in the mask, so that I ultimately kill an innocent person. And I said to them, okay, if you're gonna do that, and it looks like Laurie Strode has ended it, my audience is gonna be feeling like it's ended because, okay, I'll do it. I said, but you have to pay me a lot of money in the next movie, and you have to kill me in the first 10 minutes of the movie because I've now killed an innocent man and I can't live with that. And that's why the end of H2O is what it is and why I'm in the beginning of Resurrection. But I want to address David Gordon Green because it's way more important. Here's what I think occurred. As I said, I didn't think I would do another movie. And Jake Gyllenhaal, who is my godson, called me. And he said, hey Jane, David Gordon Green, who he had worked with on the fantastic movie Stronger, about the Boston bombing, where he said, David Gordon Green, will I talk to you about a Halloween movie? I was like, okay. And David called me, blah, 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 sent me the script. And what David Gordon Green did is this. Laurie Strode at 17 survived that night. Her friends were killed. And I believe that Laurie Strode went to school November 2nd, 1978, with a Band-Aid on her arm. And at that moment, nobody said a word to her. There was no therapy, there was no help. Laurie Strode, at the age of 17, went back to school and was sort of then the freak, the girl that survived. She had, you know, Survivor's Guild, and nobody ever talked about it. David Gordon Green sent me a script where he said, I think Laurie's been spending 40 years living behind barbed wire, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And that's her only purpose in life, at the expense of her daughter and her granddaughter, is that she knows Michael Myers is coming back. And it was this incredibly beautiful film about Laurie and her trauma, and I've seen the fucking meme, so don't worry. It was funny. But the movie also made a fucking fortune, so fuck you.
Trauma.
PTSD.
Trauma.
Generational trauma.
Trauma.
Rage and trauma.
PTSD.
Trauma.
Post-traumatic stress.
Female trauma.
Family trauma.
Generational trauma. Family trauma. You know, generational trauma.
Generational trauma.
Yeah.
Trauma.
This is what trauma looks like. You want there to be something of substance because the integrity of these movies is why they're successful. They're not successful because we just run around going, oh no. They're successful because they're about something. And at the center of all of it is Laurie Strode, a woman. Every single person in this room has persevered. There's not a person in this room that hasn't had some hardship, some difficulty in their lives that they have continued to stand up and get up each day and say, I'm going to keep trying. And the fact that Laurie Strode has never given up, it makes me want to sing the Peter Gabriel song. You know, don't give up is the message of Laurie Strode. Don't give up, people. And I love that that's her legacy. And it's her legacy because of you guys. So we have to have hope. If we don't have hope, we're still fucked. You know, like there's a moment in the new movie. It takes place, so you know, it takes place 4 years. There's a time jump of 4 years. Now, 4 years is high school. Laurie Strode has finally been given the help she's always needed. She never got anything before. And now Laurie Strode has been given grief therapy, you know, after the opera death of Karen at the end of Kills. Laurie Strode has been able to not heal, but learn to live alongside her grief. It doesn't consume her, it allows her to exist. And maybe, for a second, you get this idea that maybe Laurie Strode's gonna be okay. There's a moment, she's in a supermarket, and we shot the scene, and I remember going back to my trailer at lunch, and I was like, why does my jaw hurt? I was like, do I have like TMJ or something? Did I grind my teeth? And I realized it was because I had smiled. I don't think I've ever seen Laurie Strode smile. And Laurie Strode smiled for a second before the ceiling crashes down on her and the rest of the drama begins. But there's a moment. So I do believe there's a little hope in this movie.
And doing the work it takes to get there.
Doing the work it takes to get there, and what we do to victims, and what we do as a, it's a really interesting movie, you guys. And then it just gets incredibly intense.
Holy cow.
It gets
and I just tell you that you are in for the ride of your life.
It's a really beautiful movie.
It's a
big
swan
swing.
song that truly owns up to what I think people will want.
I also want to say one more thing before you kick me out of here in 4 minutes and 15 seconds. I want to acknowledge that what David gave me also was a family. That he gave Laurie a family. Fractured family, broken family, but a family nonetheless. And I would be remiss if I do not acknowledge here on the stage the beautiful layered work of Judy Greer and Andy Matichak, because they gave Laurie a grounding of reality, because we all have families and they're complicated.
And we have to find and form, and it's not there at the beginning, or it goes away, or we refund it.
And it was another gift from David, very much so, a gift from David for that. I love that.
All right, now we're gonna do a rapid fire. First thought, first thing, morsel, tidbit, fly on the wall, secret, that comes to your mind first when I announce a few pieces of your work. We're gonna start with, funny enough, you just mentioned Freaky Friday. Freaky Friday!
Rapid fire.
Rapid fire, first thought, secret, tidbit, morsel, fly on the wall.
When I got a text from Lindsay last week, when I was in London, she said, "Hi Jamie, it's Linz." I said, "Prove it." She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Prove it." And I said, "What was the name of the song that you and I were learning the rap to while we were doing the French fry scene in the car, where we were stuck in the car all day? What was the song we were fast forwarding and rewinding to write down the lyrics of the rap to?" And I waited for the answer. And the answer is "Like I Love You" by Justin Timberlake, and it's the Clips rap. And it's that "Ma, what you wanna do, I'm in front of you, grab a friend, see, I can have fun with two." And I'm telling you, the two of us were like writing this down, and now I know that it's Lindsay.
And what did you text her back?
Hi, Lindsay.
Okay, everybody, give me a tidbit, a morsel, a fly on the wall moment, a secret, first thing that comes to mind. True lies.
Okay, stand up. Where are you? Get up. Okay, can you put up the house lights? See this woman standing in the front? Right there on the corner? Her name is Donna Keegan. That's the brave bitch who hung under the helicopter.
All right, I gotta ask, speaking of physical movement, that takes me me right into one of my favorite films of yours. I'll never forget John Travolta doing that move with his sweaty outfit, and you're up there in your high cut, insane, the movie Perfect. Like, it lives rent-free in my mind.
Perfect was the movie I was making when I met Chris. So my connection.
Christopher Guest, her husband, who's
So,
the coolest man in the world.
My connection to Perfect is that I got married. So, I mean, the movie was great. John, I love, you know, John. I'm going to tell you a John Travolta story, 10 seconds. It doesn't matter, fuck the time. So, here's what I'm going to tell you. I don't know if you watched the Oscars. But the Oscars this year, I was asked to do the Betty White tribute. Betty White passed away. I made a movie called You Again with her, very sweet movie, and I was asked to do it. And you know, she was an animal rights activist. You love animals.
Oh, yes.
And I said to them, you know what? I'm only gonna do it if I can bring a little rescue dog out with me, because she was an animal rights activist, and in her honor, I would like to go out on the Oscars and say, hey everybody, Betty White was this cool lady, and she loved animals more than you, and basically, somebody in the world, I want you to adopt the little puppy's name was Mac and Cheese. And I said, I would like you to adopt Mac and Cheese. You know, in honor of Betty White. Go rescue an animal today. That's it. You love her, show her by rescuing an animal.
She would have loved that.
Like little Mac and Cheese. So when I was backstage, I ran into John Travolta, who I love, and he and his family lost Kelly Preston 2 years ago, and I communicated with him then, and I ran into him backstage, and I had a little puppy, and I was like, I'm going out and doing this thing with the dog. Guess who adopted Mac?
No!
And guess who flew Mac and Cheese back to his home in Florida the next day. So if you follow John, go on his Instagram and you will see this beautiful little video a week ago of little Mac and Cheese with who's now named Peanut. But that's my John Travolta. That's who John Travolta is.
That's the best story ever. You did an episode of Charlie's Angels.
Yes, I did. By the way, I did an episode of Charlie's Angels where I was Cheryl Ladd's best friend. And somehow somebody was trying to kill me, I don't remember. And all I know is that in the episode we're walking over a bridge, the bridge collapses, and we fall into the water, and Cheryl has to wrestle an alligator.
Well, you know what angel's got to do, what an angel's got to do. And Chris Monroe is going to get the job done. Sorry. You know.
It's all right. Come back, Drew. Come back, Drew.
I am Dylan Summers from Charlie's Angels. I just went to...
Before we get off this, can we take that picture?
Yes.
Because, by the way, I don't think my family will understand this. And I think there's really only way to make them understand it, which would be to take a certain photograph that I know. Again, I'm not going to be able to come and find those of you who made the wrong choice. I accept your choice. I fight your choice.